All right. So on December 14th, this is the Planning Commission. We are lacking a quorum, so we won't have any decisions made this evening. It'll just be an informal discussion. Probably won't last very long. So that's it.
Sure when the next quorum will be achieved.
Right. Not quite sure when the next quorum is. We're working on it. Worst case, it looks like January 11th. Right.
Kate will be gone.
So right.
So these are just the people you thought might
Well,
come tonight?
Andrew is someone who said that if he came at all, he would have to leave at 8. But he had a conflict not arising until 8. The other Mike has set up for Perry, who has said, don't count on him for December. They just had a baby. But he didn't say, I won't come.
I see.
So the last thing I wanted to happen was he'd get here and we hadn't warned the meeting and you had 4 and then I have to say, oh, you can't have a meeting because we didn't warn it. So we warned it as both. Fully expecting that this
You
would
had said last night that you had just had a baby.
No. I was saying it wasn't me. Right. Yeah, I think maybe I'm a perpetual seeker of silver linings, and I'm wondering if maybe going through the plan that this might be, if we have to have problems with quorums and that sort of thing, this may be the best time to have it, because we could still work with the section leads to work on beefing up the drafts so that when we do start having quorums, we can then have more content to go through.
as I was mentioning earlier, as far as the energy section is concerned, I mean, if Tim Gitterman needs to be appointed and it has to happen, I believe that that's something you can do as chair. You could do it outside of a meeting, you could do it in a meeting, and you could give the instructions, a subcommittee, have at it.
It was
You could
pretty
start them working.
well decided already, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking that it was more a matter of just picking the date and then formalizing Tim. I'm happy to do that.
So if you have energy going, and then we've had to check in with the Natural Resources Committee, they're a little bit clearer.
Mhm.
You know, there are 2 other sections. Kate Lally's been working on transportation. I know that the PADS committee has been getting closer to developing their comments on it. So I think if we keep working those subcommittees, you'll see more progress, and the quorum doesn't come into play.
That's kind of why I'm thinking that if this had to happen, this is a good stretch of topics. Yeah, is there anything that we need to be concerned with in terms of having to make a decision near term that might require a special call-in meeting or something?
Having to do with the plan or anything?
Yeah, not so much the plan. I think that as long as we're working through drafts and then when we get together, we can start to formalize, but
Well, if there's a desire to warn a public hearing for a zoning change, that's predictable. You will need a quorum for that. It could be something that if people are in agreement to warn the hearing, it could be something set up. Everybody could be away. We have the phone on the desk here. We could still have a meeting. When you actually, that's to warn it. Actually hold it though, you'll want people to be here. That's going to get 6 or 8 weeks down the road. Sorry. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So that'll be 6 or 8 weeks down the road. But on the immediate horizon, no, there is not a single event where I'm feeling like, oh gosh, these guys have to schedule an action.
okay.
But
And I guess by asking that, I was thinking more of if there was anything around the form-based zoning or anything that needed a decision before the end of the year or anything like that. But
well, the thing that would be required is a decision on the part of the planning commission that it's going to accept Brandy's work as complete. That'll just mean she's off the hook. She'll get her final check, but then the commission will have to decide whether or not it wants to take that to public hearing. She has not been expressing concern about the commission taking that action. She hasn't submitted a final invoice or anything like
Right.
that. As far as I know, she still has to finalize the graphics.
Okay.
But if months were to go by, I would imagine that she would want that. We're not, I hope, going to be in the position months from now.
Yeah, so I guess with that, I mean, I'm happy to leave mics on and video and that sort of thing, unless there's anything with things taping, if there were any comments that anybody wanted to get on record during an informal meeting.
I mean, does you, either one of you, since you are both at the Natural Resources Committee meeting, want to offer some kind of a recap of that and what happened there, just to,
Sure,
because those meetings aren't recorded, they're videotaped, and
that's true. Yeah, actually, let me.
We already did the minutes for that, didn't we?
the minutes are posted. I don't believe that those minutes, unless you're on a list that Susan,
I don't think they get circulated.
yeah, I
No,
mean.
we had already done them. We had already approved those minutes.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were asking about getting copies of the minutes for the Natural Resources Committee meetings.
That's the meeting I was talking about. Didn't we approve the?
Oh no, that was from the
The
retreat.
retreat. We're
From the
talking about the
retreat.
meeting that was last
Oh.
night.
Yeah, there was.
Okay,
there-
okay, I did
To
not.
our meeting last night, just to sort of give us some direction, because we had started, Susan Mecklenburg and I had started looking at the town plan section of the, I mean,
The natural and
the
cultural,
natural
Natural
and
and scenic.
scenic resources section of the
Oh, okay,
plan, and
okay.
started playing with the language in that. And then we were actually surprised to see that some of the things that we were thinking about were already in there, but we were thinking about ways to reorganize it so that it seems more, less redundant in some places and more organized in other places. And so it was helpful to have Jason be able to come, just to even be able to hear how you are planning to proceed, and how much work that we're willing to do, are you willing to accept? Can we be one of those committees, so to speak?
And yeah, and to add on that, because we hadn't gotten around specifically to the natural and scenic resources and land conservation section. Your name is in parentheses,
My name is.
but I think that was
Well,
from
it was
a.
actually, I mean, when the assignments were first developed, Jamie had signed up for that one, and Dick had been kind of the backup. So it's really to find a replacement as the lead. I mean, unless Dick wants to be the lead on natural resources.
I don't have a preference, really. I'm fine.
And really,
It's really one topic, isn't it? More or
Well,
less.
we actually thought that, well, that's a section in itself, that there are a number of other sections that natural resources issues come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once we get through that, we would start to look at some of those others and see where the connections are, maybe in our recommendations at least, try to cross-reference, so that when you get around to doing regulations, you have notes,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like the situation with energy and transportation. If you remember the document that the Regional Planning Commission proposed, it was both edits to the transportation section where energy comes into play, and primarily in the energy section,
Mm-hmm.
which is what will be handed off, in a sense, to the energy subcommittee when they get rolling. My own feeling is that the first things first, and the first thing that needs to be done is that if we're going to deal with the existing sections, is the natural and scenic resources section. To the extent that you and Susan want to offer suggestions on the natural resource aspects of energy or the naturally resource, go ahead and offer those. I mean,
Right. Yeah,
there will
that
be
would-
a place for those. But the job one, in my view, is the suggested edits to the text, like we talked about last night, and those maps.
And staying coordinated so we don't end up working on something that you're already, so that we don't
Right.
put two sets of documents
Yes,
together.
exactly.
So if we know what's going on and you know what's with us.
And so there are a couple of options with that. If you wanted to take on the leadership for the planning commission of that particular section, we could either keep you posted on suggestions as we go forward, or you could join us
Okay.
when we meet to do that.
Oh, I don't mind doing that. And you meet on Wednesdays, or when do you?
Well, we
what are you
haven't
gonna
been,
do?
we've been sort of doing it according to Susan's and my independent schedules.
Okay.
Because we were doing it as a subcommittee of our committee. So we've just been sort of setting up times, and I think that we probably won't meet again till after the first of the year in that context. 'Cause I'm less busy, but I also have family coming to visit, so,
Yeah, me too. And I also have a lighter schedule in January.
yeah,
And-
I think we all will. Maybe not Susan,
So-
she's committed to a lot of things lately.
And from the Natural Resources Committee, that section is a big one, but then I was looking at it as almost just another set of eyes or sets of eyes to scan some of the other sections. There was the future land use,
Yeah, and Susan had also made comments on future land use.
Right.
Yeah.
and then there's various aspects involved concerning stormwater that it would be great to be consistent with what the Natural Resources Committee is looking into.
And then we thought, at Jason's suggestion too, we thought that we would start to sort of keep a tally of places where when we do development review, we come up against those blocks where we have things that we would like to communicate to the DRB, but that there are no teeth to any regulations. And so we'll definitely start sort of keeping tabs on that and be able to pass that along to you.
I want to just make one point about stormwater. There is no stormwater section per se.
Right.
So, and my suspicion is that a lot of the comments that people in the Natural Resources Committee would make regarding stormwater are already found in the Natural and Scenic Resources section, or if they're not there, the water quality part of that chapter could have those suggestions added. The way that, if we want to look at it in addition to the natural resource aspects of it, then we want to look at it from the standpoint of, Chris Robinson and the infrastructure that he manages. That's in the growth section that Perry is heading up. Although Perry and Dick also have been really more focused on the economic development piece and the population and housing growth aspect of it, the public utilities hasn't been cracked yet. And that was going to be one of the things, if we had a quorum, I'd be doing the presentation on utilities, and it's one of, like 10 or 12 different topics. So they could make their comments on it there also, but I think that you really are more concerned about it from the resource perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have different foci, I guess, than Chris would.
Yeah, and I guess especially sitting in with the Natural Resources Committee last night and then the Housing Subcommittee last week, I like the idea of separate efforts so that you're gaining the perspective of that group. And then when we bring it back in to assimilate it, we can have some perhaps not necessarily differing viewpoints, but differing perspectives of what needs to be included that can then force some discussion around, well, what does this ultimately need to look like?
Yeah.
I think that's the way. The farm out the initial work and then use the planning commission as the body that reconciles and hear the argument about looking at it one way and hear the opposing argument or a different argument about looking at it another way, and then you still make the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not a resolution, maybe you decide that you're going to look at it both ways.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not looking at it as one way wins. It's just
Right.
more how do we end up with a more robust product at the end. Well, that's good.
There's no quota on time, that's the other good thing.
Right. I was just kind of assuming that, Jamie's out, things shift to me, and now just everybody said, that's it, we're done.
You can just get up and walk away from the table, that's all you need to
I-
do.
Yeah, I'd do a mic drop, but those are expensive, so I won't do that. Yeah, so and I apologize. I think I've met you before, and I'm blanking on your name.
John.
John, right. Oh,
Energy.
right, exactly. I knew there was a connection I was missing there. So as part of energy, and this is something that I'm going to spend some more time on over the next couple of weeks, and maybe if we don't mind chatting about that for a little bit.
No. Everything's fair game tonight.
As I'm sure has been explained previously, there's basically a structure from the Regional Planning Commission that there's a checklist basically that the town plan needs to include these certain checks, and the energy section currently, what we had. Did we originally have one, or we did and it was really small?
There's been an energy section in the plan for many years, yes.
Right, but it was, that's what it was. We had one, but now there's a lot more stuff that needs to be in there, and Melanie Needle from the Regional Planning Commission went through and did some markups to say, here's the bulk of what needs to be included. Now you guys massage it and take it and do whatever you will with it. The main thing that we were realizing as we started getting into that is that it would be ideal to be able to back up what's in the energy section with data that supports what it is we're trying to do. And that's where forming an energy subcommittee to be able to look into that and kick things around and decide, well, what's the best way to present data, what should be in there. I didn't want to get into something of just throwing data in there that we've gotten from various areas without some organization or input from professionals who work in that area. And it sounds like the names that have committed so far, I think, bring some great background to that exercise. And then there was another individual who couldn't commit full time, but is interested in being informed in an advisory type of position, if like wherever input might be needed. So it would probably be something where we need to do a kickoff meeting in January, really kind of lay things out, and then communication through email can be dicey just due to open meeting laws, but we can filter everything through a central point to disseminate and then provide feedback. Since you're here, had we laid out that was going to be Mondays or a Monday a month?
That the meetings would take place?
Yeah, was there something that was thrown out previously?
Not that I recall.
Are they authorized to start meeting now?
It's really up to Jason.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jamie had not hit the green light, and I think that with the addition of one more person who had said he was willing to be on, and that's Tim Gitterman, I think that's saying it right, I had understood that then the date would be chosen for the kickoff. As far as the day of the week, I didn't hear anything about that.
We can let them pretty much decide that.
Yeah, I mean, what I would love to do, and this is where, I guess just to vocalize it, I completely understand the reasoning behind the open meeting law rules and that sort of thing. But in terms of trying to coordinate when people meet and that sort of thing, I'd love to just...
Scheduling discussions are
That's
not
okay.
a worry as far as the open meeting law is concerned.
Okay.
So there's 5 members with the new guy, Tim.
Well, if there are 5 people appointed, then it will take 3 to constitute a quorum.
So you have the data that they would need as a group, or just are there members that already have some of that data?
Well, we have the data that came from the Regional Planning Commission, which is providing this help to the town so that when this plan is rewritten, it has the things in it that give us this higher status in the 248 process. That's what this is all about, is to have that higher status. We've got data that they generated as part of their modeling on the regional level. I think that with the people that we have who've said they're willing to serve, they may be able to generate their own or find comparable data in other places, like Jason said, to illustrate or back up some of the points that we're making in the text.
Mm-hmm.
So unofficial sort of subcommittee, so volunteers also a subject to the open meeting law?
I'll call it a true subcommittee of a committee, yes, it's a body, and it should meet the open meeting law. So The housing subcommittee posts its agendas, they do minutes, they're just like the planning commission.
So they should try to set up a formal meeting to organize,
Yes,
get the data, pick their chair.
yeah, as a subcommittee of the planning commission,
Yeah.
they should act like the planning commission and they should post, do minutes and so on. And avoid having conversations that are not in public about it, at least among 3 or more. Yeah, because this is, I would call it formal. I mean, you're going to all the trouble of soliciting and you're creating this body. If it was really, really informal, it wasn't thought of as a subcommittee, it was just 3 people that were given a common task, yeah, maybe not, but.
It is. I keep wondering if there's a way to do. I think it would be tremendously helpful, clearly, to meet in person on a monthly basis, similar to the Natural Resources Committee, and that's the structure that was set up. Yet at the same time, this being a relatively aggressive schedule, and we were looking at this being a thing through about May, I think it was. There needs to be a way to collaborate, and then based on open meeting laws, it just needs to be a more open way of collaborating. So, I mean, short of something like a Slack or something like that, which could be great. Another way could be if we had at least an initial meeting, have that section of the plan in a Google Doc, which it already is, and then come up with some outline type of ideas and just do some brainstorming. And then we can have people interact through that document, which, as long as that's open, I think
Yeah,
wouldn't be a challenge to those laws,
I
right?
think that was suggested at the state level, and I'm not sure that it's, because Jessica and Kate Webb were trying to work with legal counsel and with other people like us who have been talking to them about it. And I don't know that anything's been resolved about that yet.
so one of the things that was on the agenda if you had a meeting was that item about the protocol. And the way that we're addressing it for now is that people, as long as everything is made as an edit rather than a comment, and we had started out dealing with comments, but if we convert all the comments to edits, then people can have the write privileges and people can have the view privileges, but you can have the view privileges to the published version, so it won't be redlined. So the material that the group has produced at any moment in time can be seen in that published version. So that's why we have that page on the website that has the links to all of the published versions. They will look different, but it's the exact same content.
So how do you then reconcile it if it's not marked up like a track changes document? How do you reconcile it with the original or one that 2 people have done? Or
Some of the changes that we have made make the documents unrecognizable almost.
It's so much stuff that are going on that you really don't want the red line. And the commission, or I've had the conversation with at least some of you, that the document that you warn for public hearing will not be a red line version, just because it's beyond hope to track everything.
Right.
So my fear is that we will make a document that reads really nice, but may not say exactly what we want it to say. It may miss some of what was. So editing that final document is going to be important to make sure that we haven't deleted something that's important.
Well, I mean,
Well,
that's, you want to make sure it says what you want it to say. That's what you're doing when you're editing.
But when
right?
it's constantly changing, it's hard to do that.
yeah, and with
That's
other
why I
people
kind of got
having
upset last
edited-
time we were around, when we were,
with other people
where
having
Kate was
edited.
editing right up to the meeting. We don't
Right.
have a time to absorb any, to
And that's why I'm shifting to a model where sections can be worked on, and then when we have a meeting and we say, okay, January 11th, we're going to talk about, well, it'd be too soon, I think, for energy, but let's say transportation. That January 11th, we're going to talk about transportation, then anybody who wants to add and comment on that section, and if Kate being the lead on that, if she solicited for comment and we could even review it online, we could add our comments, and then she can go and assimilate all those so that when we get to that meeting on the 11th, we could then do I don't know that we need to be doing line by line read-throughs, but we can do a read-through to talk about any of the more contentious areas.
I have a suggestion that if it's on the 11th, then if we say that all the editing will be done by Monday.
I know that you were concerned about the timing
Because
because
I
the
like
last
to-
minute is problematic.
I like to spend Tuesday and Wednesday knowing what I think is right or wrong. And most of what Kate does is pretty good.
Right.
It's just that you don't have a chance to really get into it. So if Dean had the material on Monday and could just ship it to us so that we could,
And that's just a matter of discipline, it's a matter of discipline. It's kind of like with the DRB where they say, we need that material that day of the mailing, and if it's not in the mailing, we're not going to accept it at the night of the hearing. And it's hard to impose that discipline on yourselves, but that would help.
it would definitely help.
And that's where I'd like to see the shift go, and I've been guilty as well. But I think it would be great to, if we have, you even have in here the conceptual illustrative schedule, but if we had every week in there and we just have what topics we want to go over during those weeks, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances, but then we could even get into, well, if somebody who's leading a section is supposed to be on that particular week and they find out they're going to be out of town, then who could we switch with?
Yeah.
So that we could,
Well, up to this point, I have, I think 3 different versions of a schedule that I started working on with Jamie that was looking at November, December, and part of January. And now here we are, basically, it's going to be for end of December and January and February, in an attempt to do that, not necessarily week by week, but meeting by meeting. You and I think, could try to sit down and hammer something out.
yeah,
I could take a crack at it, but I think it would be great to get some immediate feedback on it.
certainly. Does that model sound reasonable to you as far as?
Yeah, actually, I think everything sounds really good. I think Dick actually brought up a good point that there's efficient ways to do things that may ultimately not be effective. But I think really, if we just get to a point where we meet, the subcommittee meets, but even just put a name to a face, communicate very generally, I think then we can actually determine maybe the frequency that we'll be able to meet, and maybe it'll actually do things a little bit more simply. A little side remark too. It's when I attended the get together here, I think it was Monday at the library with Kevin and VIA. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I think almost a third of the questions brought up, if not maybe even more, had to do with energy and efficiency. And so just a side thought is if we have a mechanism of some sorts for public feedback to direct towards what we look into and research for the plan, I think that would be a good way to make sure that we have that involvement and just have that to put in consideration.
Certainly. If I could lay out what I think might be ideal is if we can get a date on the books, and Dean, I can work with you, and then we can send out an email distribution and figure out what date would work. But to get a date on the books for January, where we can do the names to faces and be in a room, do an overview of the section, lay out what needs to be done, start soliciting thoughts, and then get a little bit of momentum going, but then have whatever the public meetings are, they would be warned, right?
When you say
and-
whatever the public meetings,
the meetings of
energy
the subcommittee,
yes,
right.
those would be.
So those formal meetings would need to be warned anyway, and then that would be an opportunity to encourage people. If we've got a link to the document on the website that people could look at, my first thought was have a contact where if any member of the community has ideas, then feel free to reach out to that contact. Depending on the level of interest, that could get overwhelming potentially. And with Gail nodding, that's good validation. But I would like to see engagement. I'd like to see lots of ideas. I don't want to get to a point where we have a finished product and we put a lot of time into it, and then then it somehow gets opened up to the community and people start paying attention and say, wait, we don't want this, and then we get
So
divisive.
if the committee just drafts a paragraph in Front Porch Forum and Shelburne News to let them know that you're meeting at a certain time or something, anybody who's interested.
And most of those get warned on Front Porch Forum, and do they don't go into Shelburne News though, right?
The planning commission and the DRB meetings and the select board meetings get mentioned on Front Porch Forum. But the housing subcommittee has not, to my knowledge, regularly at least had their notices on Front Porch Forum. But this group, the energy group, could certainly do that.
Well, if they want to attract 8 or 9 people in town who may be interested, there's probably, most people are just going to ignore it, but there probably are a few people who would have some positive input.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the energy section and the statutory requirements to have this elevated status, a lot of the discussion with the public is going to be about what the document needs to include and not what it needs to say if we're going to have this status. So in other words, if the town's committed to having the status, there are certain things that are going to need to be in the plan. And a lot of the interaction with the public will be explaining, we want this status, so that's why it's in there. Because it needs to be in there, or else we won't have the status. And people can question, the desirability of the status, and we can give the background, but I don't know that you'll have to give the background all that much. But the background is that Shelburne is a community where there's been the feeling that the Public Service Board, I should call it what it's called now, the Public Utilities Commission, has not been responsive when the town has expressed concern about projects. We feel like, community feels like the plan that people work so hard on doesn't have an impact. So now we're told, if you want your plan to have impact, it's got to have these features. So we're going to make sure we have those features in our document.
All right. So then I'll, maybe sometime early next week.
I was going to say, I think I have a note on my calendar for Tuesday just to see if that would work for you. But
I could make Tuesday work.
let me just double check because I have so many things.
Yeah, it'd be great to just get that ball rolling, and then even if it's some preliminary, if I could write something up and even link to the section so members can take a look at it, get familiar with it. I can pose a few questions of things that we're looking to, gaps we need to fill, and just have people start thinking about it so that when we get together in January, we'll all be familiar.
Yeah, Tuesday was the day I was looking at, so if you have a better time during the day, then we can.
No, I should be, as long as I set it ahead of time, I should be good. Yeah. Want to do morning again?
So 9 a.m.?
Sure. All right. Any other topics for this?
Just to follow up with Gail, I think if you guys let me know when you're going to gather, and I'll try to be there.
I will. I'll let you know. What we did was, last week we met Saturday morning. And we met prior to that once in the middle of the afternoon at the winery. Very informal.
That sounds good.
So it's Susan's schedule that's really most complicated, because she has a lot of responsibilities at work, whereas my work is more flexible. So I'll just put you on the list and we can talk together.
Okay.
And then I guess just looking at that, the assignments, towers and telecom facilities was going to be Jamie. Um, did he actually present something around that, or were we just talking about it?
We did, as far as I know, he hadn't edited anything. I think he was anticipating it.
Okay.
Do we have what he had done in the past as far as the
Like-
work he generated the last time we went through?
Well, that section was added really as part of the effort that was promoted by the select board too. Short answer is I'm not.
Wonder if
I'm
we
not
should
sure.
work off that, whatever that document was that we had generated.
Yeah, I
Did
just don't
we
remember
generate-
what that was.
Did we generate anything? Actually, most of it was appealing to the Public Service Board, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty focused, it's not like a lot of the other sections, it's pretty focused on
Right.
that one issue.
So is this topic mainly us determining where we want to site?
Telecommunication?
Is that
Well,
part
it's-
of that?
It's sort of like the energy facility. We have a lot of wants, but our statutory ability to achieve those wants is not as great as it is with a lot of other things because of the fact that it's regulated by the Public Service, or the Public Utilities Commission. And whereas energy has this process for this elevated status, there isn't something comparable for telecommunications facilities. We do have a telecommunications ordinance, but again, I'm not sure that that ordinance is going to have the impact that we would like it to have because of this essentially preemption. So anyway, it's focused. I mean, it's a section, Dick, that I think that there probably won't be much harm in it staying largely the way that it is. Are you wondering about, should it have a lot more stuff in it? Should there be stuff taken out of it?
Well, I know in the discussions that we had, we were, Kate and I were in agreement that, which is rare, but trying to locate on poles, communications, trying to determine which areas were not going to be suitable for towers.
Yeah.
And I think that was the extent of it.
Yeah,
Most
I
of
mean,
the discussion.
it's maybe hoping for too much because Jamie's, if he continues to be as active on the select board as he was, he's the point person on this because he worked with the select board when the select board created this ordinance.
Right.
Maybe there's some way that his talents can be brought to bear. Maybe he did get started, maybe he got more into this than I realized, and I just haven't seen his proposed edits.
Yeah, maybe if you could just get us a summary of what he did.
Right.
Give us something to work from.
And it could be two angles as well. I just made a note to just check in with him and see if he had anything that he's started on. I mean, I'm happy to, at least I can work on shepherding that through if there's a, it didn't seem like there was a lot that needed to be added. I think he was just looking at maybe adding some perspective into it.
It wasn't my impression that it was a section that had a lot of gaping holes. Because it is more recent than the rest of the plan.
And in a lot of, there's only so much that we have control over as well, was my understanding as far as siting goes.
Yeah, I mean, the telecommunications piece is not really one of the required pieces. It's a piece that's in there to address the Shelburne specific concern.
All right, well, I can certainly shoot him a note, see where that's going, and I didn't have anything specific. I know something that does need to be addressed at some point, and it sounded like the select board had asked for a position from the planning commission on the open seat. Not having a quorum, we clearly can't do anything official about it, but just something to think about.
Yeah, and some of that, or if it, in addition to the select board's interest or Jamie's interest in knowing what the commission felt, the town manager was interested in doing that as well. my understanding is that he is going to advertise. And depending on the results of that ad, a name or names will go to the select board. And at the time, if Jamie says, no, I really think I'd like to go back, then I would imagine there won't be any appointment. But this
Right.
way, things can keep moving forward.
Yep.
And so that was gonna be one of my mentions, is that before the mics go off, that people should be on the lookout for an ad or some mention in the town manager's report about the vacancy on the planning commission. And if people are interested, they should send their names to Joe Colangelo.
Yeah, I think it's important just to know that, I mean, eventually, I've got nothing but good things to say about Jamie, and it's definitely going to be a gap on this commission. I think the select board is lucky to have him, and the town is as well. From a planning commission standpoint, I also think that it's important, just based on this week and what we've seen for the future weeks, that we need to be worried about having quorums, ensuring that we've got enough people that can make it. Something that came up last night, somebody asked about alternates.
Yeah,
Is that a,
it's
I
a
mean-
statutory thing. So the statute provides for the DRB to have alternates. It isn't something that's provided for in statute or in our charter, which is also statute. I mean, could our select board informally do it? You know, maybe, I don't,
The only thing an alternate is good for is getting you a quorum so you can vote. I did the DRB alternate thing for 3 or 4 years, and it was very frustrating.
right, because I guess if you're not,
You get in there,
Yeah.
unless you actually attend meetings, you don't really know enough to
right,
vote, in my mind.
yeah, and some communities deal with that where the alternates attend every meeting. They're like the 13th and 14th jurors.
I
who
recommended
have
that
to sit through the whole trial.
to the DRB, that
Yes.
alternates attend at least one meeting a month, so that they have a basis for understanding how the DRB works, but
It's just,
it's too hard.
that makes it even more difficult, or less likely that you'll have people volunteer to be our alternates.
Right.
right. And then that could be frustrating if you know, as an alternate, if you're not actually, if you're in attendance and you're an alternate, you're not voting on stuff. So then, at what point? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, still more to come, I guess, around that.
So many.
I suspect, though, based on the doodle polls and that sort of thing, that we're most likely not going to have a quorum before January. But I
Unless
wouldn't.
we hear from Perry, and he says something like, yeah, I can make the 28th. But without that, we
Right.
won't.
Okay. All right. So we'll play that by ear, and if we can squeeze one in, we will. If not, we won't.
I might be leaving on the 9th of January.
You may
Oh,
be-
okay.
Wait, what?
I may be traveling on the 9th,
On the 9th. Jan.
and, yeah, I'm gone for a
Okay,
week or
because
two.
this becomes problematic because
I understand.
Kate will be gone then.
Mm-hmm.
Then and the select board has limited meetings between now and then. I believe they have one more meeting on Tuesday.
Do we know when Kate leaves?
Well, Kate will be gone. She will be here on the 28th, but she's gone until she would be back, I believe, for the second meeting in January. So she will miss the meeting on January 9th, at the very least. So that would be a second.
Oh, it's the 11th, though, right?
And
Meeting's the 11th.
Asim will
Yeah, I
be
think
back,
so.
but he might have to, because of his class schedule, he would be late.
I was just wondering if we could move that. I won't know for sure for 3 or 4 days,
Yeah, it'd be the
Not-
11th and the
either really needs
25th.
to-
but maybe we could bump that one in
Otherwise,
January forward
have
to
an odd
like the
number.
5th or something,
Maybe because
or the 4th.
the way things are right now, I wouldn't make this the second meeting in January. So something else that we can talk about on Tuesday then is if we want to do it through Doodle, that's cool, or create an online spreadsheet or something that has all the dates mapped out and people can check in with who can be there and
Yeah.
not, because we might
We'll
need to
give-
shift.
We'll give people the whole spring, the whole
Right.
spring.
Let's just lay it all out there, and then obviously as things change, they change, and I'll echo what Jamie always says, it is a volunteer commission and there are other priorities, but at the same time, I'd like to give us as much opportunity to
Yeah.
be
And the
able to
one
have
thing
quorums.
that may be worth talking about is night of the week. Is there a better night of the week?
Right.
Or a
I
better
mean, for
week
some of
the
these
month.
travel plans, it won't matter, but maybe for some other conflicts, like if Asim has a class, but he doesn't have it another night.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about that on Tuesday and then figure out what we can present, and we'll
Try
is-
not to make it on the second Wednesday.
Yeah, I
If you
think I
change
need
the
to
date, 'cause
now
that-
start getting a more broad perspective of when all the different meetings are, because I don't want to step on anything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just would be the same night that we meet, so we wouldn't be able to have as much interaction.
Right. Okay. So, a lot to think about before Tuesday. Cool. Well, thank you. To the thanks.